They say the military teaches discipline. My family beat them to it. Dinner in the Rowan house wasn't just a meal. It was formation. Plates at 6 o'clock, forks at 9, opinions at 0. Colonel Frank Rowan Dad sat at the head like he was still commanding a battalion, not a table with 2 daughters and a wife who cooked silently. Mom, Marla, was a war nurse once. These days, she mostly moved in and out of rooms like a ghost in orthopedic slippers. At 13, I learned to chew quietly, not on cue, and disappear from conversations without leaving my chair. I also learned that the only way to earn space at the table was to be exceptional. The problem was that my sister Laurel had already claimed that title and laminated it. 2 years older, Laurel was the golden child. Born with perfect posture and a 4.0 GPA. She once won a regional debate tournament in 8th grade and gave a full acceptance speech. Dad framed it. That night, I was 15. Laurel had just made the shortlist for some youth military leadership intensive like she was already gunning for her own Pentagon office. Mom served roast, and Dad carved like he was field dressing a deer. Laurel sat across from me, still in her ROTC uniform, smiling like she ran the whole damn state. So, Jenna, Dad started. Tone halfway between casual and court-martial, what are your plans after graduation? That question always meant one thing. You're behind. Time to justify your existence. I've been thinking about enlisting, I said, calm as I could manage. Laurel's fork stopped midair. Mom blinked twice. Enlisting? Dad repeated like I'd said, stripping. Yeah. Army. Not officer school. Enlistment first. Work from the ground up. Silence. Not angry silence. Worse, the disappointed kind. Laurel's heading to Sandhurst, Dad said, correcting me without correcting me. Command track. Real leadership. I didn't say anything. I wasn't looking for approval. I just wanted a reaction that didn't make me feel like gum under the dinner table. Why the Army? Mom asked gently. You never mentioned that before. I didn't think it mattered, I said. Laurel gave me that perfect sibling smile. The one that said, it doesn't. And here's the thing, she wasn't wrong. That house wasn't built for second-place stories. You either won, or you shut up about trying. Laurel understood the rules. I tried rewriting them. Spoiler. That doesn't go over well in a house where the thermostat has stricter protocols than the Geneva Convention. Dad cut into his meat with military precision. If you're serious, you'll need discipline. I'd been eating dinners with this man for 17 years. I was practically in the Special Forces, surviving disappointment. I'm serious, I said. That's new, Laurel muttered. That was when I realized something important. I would always be the afterthought. Laurel was the sun. I was her gravity. Allowed to exist, but only if I didn't drift too far. You'll need to start training now, Dad continued. And I'll call Captain Wilcox. See if he can recommend someone who can whip you into shape. Because, of course, I needed whipping. Laurel got coached. I got whipped. Mom passed the green beans like we hadn't scheduled my transformation into someone more palatable. I said thank you. Because that's what you do when you're not the favorite. You stay polite and hope someone notices your effort over the noise. This is where you're supposed to say. But things changed. They didn't. Laurel's photo stayed above the fireplace. Mine never made it past my bedroom shelf. She got applause. I got advice. She got medals. I was told to watch and learn. Still, I wasn't planning to quit. Even if I had to start at the bottom, even if they rolled their eyes when I spoke, I would wear that uniform. And when I did, they wouldn't ignore me forever. Quick pause. If any part of this sounds like your family dinner table, hit the comments and tell me about it. Don't forget to subscribe, too. You're gonna want to hear how this ends. Laurel went to Westford Academy the following fall. Got a scholarship, of course. I signed up for the first available Army intake and shipped to Fort Baynard, Ohio. I told no one. It felt good taking off without a send-off, no speeches, no toasts. Just me, my boots, and a duffel bag full of we'll see how long she lasts. It turns out that I lasted longer than most. I learned quickly that silence could be sharper than shouting. At Fort Baynard, nobody cared who your sister was. Nobody asked where you ranked at your high school graduation or if your dad called you kiddo without disappointment. Whether you could follow orders, keep pace, and not puke in your helmet during heat drills mattered. I didn't puke. That alone put me ahead of 6 others in my platoon. The Army gave me something I never had growing up: equal footing. You either pulled your weight or you didn't. It didn't matter if you were loud or invisible, charming or dry as unbuttered toast. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I just didn't want to give them a reason to doubt me. But Blakemont had a long reach. Mail call was a regular gut punch. Letters from home were mostly for other people. The one time I got an envelope, it wasn't from Mom or Dad, it was from Laurel. Typed. Not handwritten. Laurel didn't have time for ink. It read, "Saw you made it through first round. Proud of you. Stay sharp, L." I folded it and slid it into the back of my journal. I wasn't sure if I should be grateful or insulted. Proud of you? Like I was a stray dog she'd trained to sit. Meanwhile, back home, the Rowan house had become a shrine. Everything Laurel touched turned into a framed photo or a social media post with words like future leader, honor, and legacy. People at church whispered about her like she was already in a military museum. My name rarely came up unless someone asked Mom how Laurel's little sister was doing. That was my unofficial title, Laurel's little sister. Not Jenna. Just a side note in someone else's story. She earned her officer bar the year I got promoted to E4. My unit sent a congratulations letter to my parents. Dad never mentioned receiving it. Instead, he forwarded me a scanned copy of Laurel's promotion photo. Full color, dress whites, big grin. Caption: Lieutenant Laurel Rowan. Leadership in action. I remember staring at the image for a long time. Not because I was jealous, honestly, I wasn't. I just couldn't figure out how 2 people could live in the same house and be treated like they came from different galaxies. One Thanksgiving, I got to leave and flew home. My hair was shorter, my arms were stronger, and my confidence sat just a little closer to the surface. But the second I walked through that door, the clock reset. Laurel was already there. She'd arrived 2 days earlier and brought home a plaque from a training symposium she spoke at, kind of by accident. It was already on the mantel. Jenna. Mom smiled like I was a friend from work. Your sister just told us about the leadership panel in Quantico. Isn't that exciting? Super exciting, I said, hanging my jacket. Do you want to see her keynote speech? Frank recorded it on the television. Of course, he did. I'm good, I said. Later that night, we were all sitting in the living room. The fireplace crackled. Laurel was discussing logistics, bottlenecks in a desert operation, and Dad was nodding like she was reciting the Constitution. I sat there sipping tea like I was in a hostage situation. Then I saw eyed in the shelf above the television. Photos lined up like medals. Laurel's officer portrait, Laurel's high school valedictorian photo. Laurel with a senator. And between all that glory, nothing of me. Not one damn picture. Not even the basic graduation photo every parent forces you to take in that polyester robe. Nothing. I stood up, walked to the hallway, and opened the closet. I knew where the old family albums were kept. I pulled one down. Inside were baby pictures, birthdays, and first days of school. Page after page, Laurel. Laurel in a tiara. Laurel with braces. Laurel in a Halloween costume that probably cost more than my first car. I flipped fast. Around page 20, I found a blurry photo of me in soccer cleats, half turned away, mid-blink. It might have been a mistake print. Still, Mom had written underneath. Jenna, 5th grade. I think. I put the album back. I wasn't angry. Not even sad, just tired. You can love your family and still feel like they've got you on mute. The next morning, I skipped breakfast and drove back to the base early. Nobody noticed. I knew because nobody called. When I reached the checkpoint, the air smelled like diesel and discipline. I felt more at home breathing dust than ever in my childhood kitchen. And if Laurel was the golden one, fine. She could shine all she wanted. Some of us operate better in the dark. I stopped waiting for a seat and started building my footing. At Fort Baynard, they didn't hand out praise like candy. If someone nodded at you after drills, it meant you didn't screw up. If a sergeant told you not bad, it was a standing ovation. That kind of language made sense to me. I wasn't there to impress my family. I wasn't following some legacy blueprint. I chose this path because I needed something no one could say. Laurel got to first. While she was taking selfies in dress whites with brass behind her, I was learning how to read a terrain map by moonlight. I could disassemble and reassemble a field rifle in 40 seconds flat, blindfolded. I learned how to identify landmines by vibration, not visuals. I could hold my breath longer than half my squad, not because I trained for it, but because I was used to being quiet for long stretches back home. They started calling me Rowan, without the mouth. It wasn't an insult, it was respect. I got assigned to a recon unit in the 9th Tactical Battalion. Small team, high-stakes missions, lots of mud and no backup. We went where the satellites couldn't press dig. Places with names you only hear when things go sideways. My CO, Captain Tillman, was a guy who looked like he'd been carved out of frustration and coffee. He didn't like speeches, and neither did I. The first time he saw my field report, he grunted and said, "Tight work, Rowan. You don't write like an idiot." High praise. That unit felt like something real. We weren't the kind of soldiers who got paraded at homecoming events. We didn't tweet, we moved. I didn't tell anyone about Laurel. They didn't ask. I wasn't hiding her, I didn't need her name trailing behind me like a permanent shadow. Nobody here cared who you were related to, only if you'd take a bullet or carry someone who did. One night, during a joint training op with another division, I heard a familiar last name over the radio: Lieutenant Rowan, command post check-in. My shoulders tightened before I realized they weren't talking about me. She was nearby. Laurel had been fast-tracked again and reassigned to strategic ops in the Southern Corridor. I accidentally found that out when someone left a copy of regional unit placements in the mess tent. Her name was circled, bold, and annotated. Potential for command promotion, eyes on. I folded the page and stuffed it in my pocket. Part of me felt something tighten in my chest, like an old bruise I forgot was still there. But another part of me smiled. Good for her. Let her collect her commendations. Let her sit in a climate-controlled tent giving orders. I didn't want that chair. I wanted the kind of respect you didn't need for medals to prove. We were prepping for deployment into a terrain sector. No one had fully mapped. Rumors of movement and intel were patchy. Our job was to go in, confirm, and report back. Standard recon. High risk, but I liked it that way. I liked being the first boots in. I checked my pack twice. I triple-checked the comms line. Walked the fallback path with my second in command. I ran drills with my team in full gear until even the cocky one stopped complaining. Then I stood by the transport and waited. Calm, focused. I wasn't chasing anyone anymore. And I sure as hell wasn't following. The last name I expected to hear in a field briefing was my own. Not mine, exactly. But close enough to freeze the air in the tent. Lieutenant Laurel Rowan will be taking over tactical oversight for this sector, the commander said, like he was announcing the weather. Just a matter of fact. Just a coincidence that made the muscles in my neck go rigid. I stared straight ahead. Someone behind me muttered, "Rowan, any relation?" "Not really," I said, voice flat. Technically, true. Not in the ways that counted. Forward base Hanwick wasn't glamorous. Hot air, harder ground, and a smell always hinted at something rotting out of sight. We'd arrived 2 days earlier, and I was already on my second pair of socks. Our unit had been reassigned to work recon around a suspected insurgent route. Low visibility, sketchy intel, and no backup. Just the kind of job I was used to. Then Laurel showed up with perfect posture and a laptop case. She walked into the briefing tent like it was a conference center. Same crisp uniform, the same easy smile. A couple of officers straightened up when they saw her. She had that effect like gravity that pulled respect instead of light. She caught my eye and grinned. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said under her breath. I shrugged. "I work for a living." A few chuckled. Laurel laughed as if we were sisters who bantered on weekends instead of women who hadn't spoken in over a year. During the strategy session, she took control of the table without forcing it. Laid out routes, contingency zones, and fallback protocols. Nothing flashy. Just solid planning with a polished edge. She'd been briefed on the terrain, but not enough to know how it felt out there. I asked a question about comm range in the northeast sector. She answered quickly, too quickly. I knew then that she was making calls based on satellite models, not experience. And not from walking that ridgeline in boots that picked up the heat from the rocks. Later, as people filed out, she pulled me aside. "You're leading Bravo team, right?" I nodded. "I'll be overseeing tactical from HQ. Think of me as your safety net." I gave her a look. She added, "I know you don't need one. Just saying." "Then don't," I said. She smiled again, the same old I'm above this grin. "Still sharp, huh?" "Still listening to people who actually walk the ground," I said. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture did. Like I'd flicked a switch she wasn't used to having touched. I sat with my team that night, going over the final prep. I had 3 solid scouts, 1 new guy fresh from Fort Grayson, and Corporal Denesquiet, reliable and more competent than he let on. We'd done this before. We knew how to breathe in shadows. I was plotting fallback checkpoints when one of the staff runners dropped off an updated mission packet. I opened it. Deployment time had changed. Now scheduled for 2,230 hours instead of 0400. "What the hell is this?" I asked. The runner shrugged. "New command update." I marched back to ops and found the duty officer. He confirmed it. Captain Rowan requested the timeline shift, said we'd miss the target window otherwise. I clenched my jaw. "There's no confirmation the compound will be active at that time," I said. "Our satellite pass is scheduled for 0145. Moving before then leaves us blind." The officer didn't blink. Orders came from high up. "We're moving early." I didn't say anything. I walked outside into the dusty wind, opened my notebook, and rewrote everything. Back at the tent, Dines looked up from his gear. "Problem?" "Nope," I said. "Just an adjustment." He nodded. Didn't ask more. That's the kind of trust we had. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear, just instinct. Something about the new timeline didn't sit right, but command had spoken. Laurel always had a way of getting what she wanted. I gave the green light with my gut, screaming no. 2,230 hours, we moved out. 3 teams. Night gear. No moon. Air dry enough to flake your throat. We crossed the ridgeline single file, boots silent on dust, every breath measured like currency. Laurel's revised plan had us hitting the edge of Sector 9 before the surveillance window even opened. No live feed. No satellite visuals, just her hunch that speed meant surprise. I didn't like surprises. Not in terrain that could swallow an entire squad before breakfast. Dines led point. The kid from Grayson took the rear. I stayed center, radio tight to my vest. Visibility was crap. The ground was uneven, brush tall. Our eyes adjusted, but every step felt like betting your life on a half-lit coin. We advanced 2 clicks in silence. Still no sign of movement. No light, no sound, just wind scraping through the brush like whispers that couldn't commit to a sentence. Then something flickered on the ridge. I dropped flat. Raised a fist stop. The team froze. "Could be heat mirage," Dines whispered. "Could be a trap," I whispered back. I scanned again. Nothing. We held for a beat longer, then pushed forward. Laurel's voice echoed in my head. "If we wait too long, we lose them." 5 minutes later, we hit a clearing. That's when everything unraveled. The first boom was behind us, sharp, dirty, fast. A pressure wave slammed my back, ears rang. Dust clouds everywhere. Then the second one hit closer. Right flank. The kid from Grayson screamed, but it cut off quickly. I turned and saw him on the ground, twisted wrong. A third blast lit up the east side like God flipped a switch. Tripwires. Remote charges. Perfect placement. We'd walked right into it. I crawled through dirt and found Dinesh's vest half melted, blood at his neck. He was gasping but quiet, eyes unfocused. I pulled a dressing from my pouch and pressed hard. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. "We're pulling you out," I whispered. He looked straight at me. "We knew," he said. "Didn't we?" I couldn't answer. Comms were scrambled. I tried anyway. "Bravo team, this is Rowan status report. Static. Do not return to Sector 9. Repeat, abort return, confirm." Nothing. I dragged Dines until I couldn't. His breathing slowed, his mouth opened like he had more to say. Then he went still. I didn't scream. There was no time. I grabbed his tags, then his rifle. He would have hated someone else carrying it. I slung it anyway. We regrouped at fallback point Bravo. 2 were wounded, 1 confirmed Kea, and 1 was missing. The extraction took 2 hours. 1 bird took fire, dropped smoke, and peeled off before touching dirt. The second bird barely held altitude. We loaded bodies like luggage. I climbed in last. No one said a word the whole flight back. I handed Dines tags to the med crew when we landed and filed my initial report. I didn't shower, didn't eat. I sat by the tent with blood drying on my cuffs, staring at the dark as if it owed me something. Laurel wasn't there. I checked the mission logs. Her name was listed as Remote Tactical Liaison. She'd signed off the change in timing. No field validation, no additional data. Just a single note. Target window estimated to shift earlier. Recommend adjusting insertion accordingly. A quote. Recommend. That's the word that stuck. She hadn't ordered it. She'd just suggested. Which meant, officially, this was on me. I authorized the timing. I approved the route. My name was on every page. She got to drop a suggestion and disappear. I got the blast, and my men got a flag over their caskets. The questions came before the blood even dried. Not for my team. They didn't need to ask. They'd seen it too. The terrain, the silence, the trap. Nothis came from the men in clean uniforms behind clean desks. I was summoned before I'd even taken off my boots. The debrief was held in a hot trailer with too much air conditioning. 3 officers sat across from Mioni Navy, 2 Army. No introductions, no names. Just notepads and clipped pens. A silent recorder sat on the table like a 4th accuser. They didn't offer coffee. Lieutenant Rowan, one of them began. "Walk us through your decision to authorize early deployment." I kept my voice steady. "We received a command update revised insertion time based on shifting intel. The update came from tactical oversight." "And who specifically?" "Captain Laurel Rowan." Pause. "And what authority does she hold over field command?" the Navy man asked. "None direct," I said. "But she issued a written recommendation. It was logged and passed through command." "Yet you accepted it." "I did." "And you didn't push back?" I raised concerns. "They were overruled." "Oh." He didn't nod. Didn't blink. Just wrote something down. I could already feel where this was headed. They weren't looking for accountability. They were looking for a scapegoat with a paper trail. "Did Captain Rowan sign an official order?" another officer asked. "Number." "Did you?" "Yes." There it was. Hook, line, sinker. I wasn't angry. Not yet. Mostly just cold. Like the part of my brain responsible for outrage had been shut down for maintenance. They kept asking about timelines, terrain, known threats, fallback routes, and comm strategy. I answered them all. Calm. Clear. No one interrupted. No one nodded. It was like talking into a well. The 3rd officer finally spoke. "Do you believe your team walked into an avoidable situation?" "Yes," I said. "Whose decision made it unavoidable?" I didn't blink. "Mine," I said. Because technically, it was true. I had signed the change. I had led the team. I had trusted the system. Trusted her. The silence that followed felt like a closing door. When the session ended, they dismissed me without comment. Just a vague, "You'll be notified." Not when. Not what. Just that. I walked back to the barracks. No one looked up. I wasn't radioactive yet, but I was close. I sat on my bunk. The cot creaked. I stared at my hands. They were still covered in dirt and blood. My skin felt like it didn't belong to me. An hour later, a clerk handed me a folded envelope. I opened it. Operation Nightfield. Findings. Operational deviation. Failure to adhere to planned surveillance window. Outcome, avoidable casualties. Status. Temporary suspension. Pending review. My rank remained intact for now. But the language was clear. They weren't interested in facts, they were interested in cleaning up the optics. I packed my gear in silence. Took off my patch. Folded it. Laurel didn't call. Didn't message. She sent a one-line statement to the inquiry board. Operational decisions were made by the field commander. Strategic input was non-binding. That was it. The woman who'd changed the clock on my mission sent in a disclaimer and returned to work like she hadn't lit a fuse. 2 days later, I flew home. The house looked the same porch swing. Same flag, same silence behind the door. Dad opened it and stepped back, letting me in without a word. He sat in his recliner like he hadn't moved since the war. Laurel's new promotion photo sat framed on the mantel. He didn't smile. "You made a bad call," he said flatly. "I didn't make it alone." He shrugged. "You were in charge." That was the Rowan creed. The command is responsibility. Mistakes belong to the name that signed the line. And mine was the only one on the record. Mom hovered in the hallway. She wrung her hands but said nothing. I turned to her. "Mom?" She looked at the floor. "It's a stain, Jenna. The uniform doesn't forgive." I nodded. No anger, just acceptance. I was never the one they saw in medals and speeches. I was the one who made things more complicated to explain. That night, I sat in my childhood room, staring at the ceiling fan I once threw socks into like a game. Now I just lay still, watching it spin dust over silence. The next morning, I entered the kitchen to find a plain envelope on the counter. My name is in Mom's handwriting. Inside, an invitation. Major Laurel Rowan. Promotion ceremony. Location, Blakemont Civic Center. Date, 17 May, 1900 hours. Dress code, formal military attire. No note. No hope you'll come. Just instructions. It was Laurel's big night. And I had a front row seat to nothing. I pressed my uniform like it still meant something. Jacket sharp, medals polished, hair tied back the way Dad always said. Looked like someone who gave a damn. I didn't know why I still followed that advice. Habit, probably. Muscle memory is stubborn. I showed up at the Blakemont Civic Center early. I wanted to do it on my terms, not because I was excited, but because if I had to walk into another room full of family faking pride. The parking lot was already half full. Mostly sedans and a few high-gloss SUVs. People in suits. Officers in dress blues and greens. Some local officials have folded programs, the kind of crowd that never asked who didn't get invited. I walked up the front steps, heels clicking loudly on the concrete. A young sergeant stood at the door with a clipboard. "Name?" he asked. "Lieutenant Jenna Rowan," I said. He scanned the list. Then he scanned it again. His brows pulled together. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name's not here." I blinked once. There must be a mistake. He pointed politely to the clipboard. "Only names on this list are cleared." Oh. I could see through the glass doors inside, a banner with "Congratulations, Major Laurel Rowan," hanging over the stage. Our parents stood near the front row. Mom was adjusting Dad's tie. "I received an invitation," I said. "Do you have it with you?" I opened my coat pocket and pulled it out. Clean, folded once, no note inside. He looked at it, then back at his list. "I'm sorry, ma'am. This looks like a mass print. There's no barcode, no guest ID." I nodded. Of course, there wasn't. "It's fine," I said quietly, slipping the paper back into my pocket. I turned and stepped off the stairs. Didn't argue. Didn't push. I just walked back toward the lot like I wasn't wearing a uniform, which cost me years of blood and silence. From the sidewalk, I could still see inside. A couple of cousins I hadn't seen since graduation were hugging Laurel. Someone handed her a bouquet. The mayor shook her hand. Dad clapped with his full palm like he never did for anything I'd done. I got into my car and sat behind the wheel for a long time. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there. Let the cold from the leather seat settle into my spine. When I drove off, no one noticed. No missed calls, no texts asking, "Where are you?" Not even from Mom. Laurel didn't check in. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. I stopped waiting. 3 days later, I blocked every number with my last name. Changed my email. Deleted family photos from my phone, and not in a rage, just in efficiency. I wasn't erasing them, I was clearing space. The Army called it extended leave pending review. I called it not pretending anymore. I packed everything into 2 duffels and left Blakemont without telling anyone. I headed west. Picked a town no one in my family could pronounce, let alone find. Rented a 1-bedroom above a hardware store in Knowlton, Oregon. The landlady thought I was a traveling nurse. I didn't correct her. No uniform, no rank, no brass. Just Jenna. I took long runs in the morning. Cleaned floors that didn't belong to me. Read manuals out of habit. I couldn't sleep some nights and paced the floor until 4 a.m. Other nights, I slept like I'd been hit with a shovel. I didn't think about the Army. Not at first. But trauma is patient. It doesn't shout. It just waits. It shows up in the quiet. In the smell of detergent like the one they used in base laundry. I couldn't sit on the way with my back to a door. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to stop feeling like a bad headline. And every time I caught myself thinking about Dines, I heard Laurel's voice, clean and practiced. Strategic input was non-binding. So I ran harder. And when running didn't work, I stopped running entirely. Something had to give. I just didn't know what yet. I started with the one thing they hadn't taken from me: curiosity. Not anger. Not grief. Not even pride. Just that quiet, crawling urge in my gut that said something doesn't add up. I didn't exactly wake up one day and declare, "Time to clear my name." It was smaller than that, more like a whisper under everything else. At first, it came in pieces. Flashbacks I couldn't ignore. Not dramatic ones, just flashes. Laurel's voice. The phrasing in that mission log. Her recommendations somehow made it through ops without getting flagged. I remembered how the time change came through casual, rushed, assumed. No backup satellite confirmation and no field recon delay. A single line on a sheet. Recommend adjusting insertion intel suggests early movement. It felt too clean. I hadn't said it out loud, but I thought it. Laurel had pushed that window. She'd shifted the timeline, and she'd done it through back channels that weren't supposed to carry that weight. So I started digging. Nothing dramatic. No spy gear or black ops hacking. Just a second-hand laptop, some memory from admin training, and I still knew a few people who owed me favors or at least respected me enough not to hang up. I reached out to a guy I served with in logistics, Lyle, now stationed somewhere cold and miserable in Montana. I didn't give him the whole story. Just asked if he remembered anything strange about the Nightfield op orders. 2 days later, he sent me a message. "You didn't hear this from me. But check the file trail on version 3 of the timeline. Look at who sent it and when." I pulled it up from a backup node, and he quietly unlocked it. I clicked through the chain and found what he meant. The satellite data hadn't been updated. The recommendation had gone out before Intel confirmed any early movement. Which meant Laurel's note wasn't based on real-time surveillance. She'd guessed. Or lied. Either way, she'd called a shot she wasn't supposed to make and let me take the hit when it blew up. I leaned back in my chair, hand over my mouth. Not shocked. Just sick. I dug further. Found another documented internal chat log between Laurel and a senior field coordinator. A single line stopped me cold. "She'll go with it. Jenna's cautious but obedient. If it fails, I'll take the heat." She didn't take the heat. I did. I closed the laptop and sat in silence. My hands were still. My pulse wasn't. I didn't cry. I didn't punch a wall. I stared at the floor for maybe 20 minutes, waiting for my breath to return. Then, I opened a blank document. I started typing. No preamble, no dramatic speech, just dates, attachments, and quotes. I wrote it like a report. Clean. Professional. Cold. At the top, I typed, Recipient, United States Military Office of Ethics, Internal Review Division. At the bottom, I typed, Truth matters. Even when no one's watching. I attached the files. Hit send. Then I shut the laptop and went downstairs to buy duct tape. Not for any significant reason, I needed something to fix a crack in the apartment window. The landlady wasn't going to do it. And if nothing came of the report, fine. I hadn't filed it to feel better. I filed it because silence doesn't protect anyone except the people who count on it. I didn't expect a reply. I just wanted the silence to feel earned. 3 weeks passed. Then 5, then nothing. No confirmation. No rejection. Not even an auto-response. Just digital silence so quiet it felt intentional. But I didn't chase it. I'd sent what I needed to send. If they buried it, fine. If they ignored it, fine. The only thing worse than being shut out is begging to be let back in. I kept my routine in Knowlton. Mornings on the trail, coffee at the hardware store downstairs, afternoons fixing whatever the landlady forgot. Sometimes, I read field manuals just to stay sharp. Other times, I stared at walls as if they owed me something. One morning, I woke up to the buzz of my prepaid phone. Unmarked number. I almost ignored it, but muscle memory won. Rowan, I said. The voice on the other end was clipped. Male. Professional. This is Colonel Rhodes with the Office of Military Ethics. You have time to talk. I didn't answer, I just sat up. We reviewed your submission, he continued. Everything checks out. We're amending your record immediately. Oh. I still didn't speak. You've been cleared of all responsibility tied to Operation Nightfield. Your command decisions were sound. The source of the timeline deviation has been documented as external interference. You're eligible for reinstatement. Still nothing from me. He paused. We also owe you more than a call. But this is what I can give you for now. I finally found my voice. That's enough. He exhaled. Like he'd been holding his breath since the first ring. We'd be lucky to have you back, Lieutenant. Colonel, I corrected. Another pause. Then, a soft chuckle. Right. Colonel Rowan. Welcome back. The call ended. I didn't move for a full minute. Then I stood, opened the closet, and pulled out the uniform I hadn't touched in months. It still fits. 2 days later, I flew out to rejoin the service. No press release, no family, no welcome committee. I didn't need one. I wasn't returning for closure, I was returning because I still had work to do. I reported to Fort Everlyn and got reassigned to command training for urban tactical teams. Within weeks, I was running point on simulation ops. Within 3 months, they promoted me again. This time, no one questioned it. There was a ceremony. Nothing big. No champagne. But when they pinned that silver eagle on my collar, I looked out at the faces around me, young soldiers, old veterans, 2 women from my former squad, and none of them saw a failure. Just a leader. I didn't frame the certificate. I didn't need to. But I did keep one copy, folded in the back of my drawer. Not for pride. For proof. One afternoon, I opened an email marked confidential. An invitation. 12th anniversary ceremony. Eastern Infantry Division. Location, Arlington Complex. Honoring distinguished leadership and active generals. Attendees are listed alphabetically. Rowan, Jenna, Brigadier General, Guest of Honor. Rowan, Laurel. Lieutenant Colonel. Rowan, Frank, Colonel, Rhett. I stared at the screen, not smiling. Just breathing. Even the air felt sharper. The name that once got me shut out of a building was now printed in bold at the top of the list. No more guessing. No more silence. Just a door I could walk through without knocking. I walked in like I'd never been told to wait outside. The Arlington complex was quieter than I expected. Grand, but sterile. Polished floors. Security at every corner. Nothing personal, just protocol. I showed my badge at the gate. No second glance, no clipboard check. The officer nodded. "Welcome, General Rowan." He said it like it was normal. Like it had always been true. Inside, the air buzzed with conversation and polished rank. I moved through the lobby past clusters of suits and decorated uniforms. Some recognized me. A few nodded. One lieutenant from my recon days nearly dropped his drink. I didn't stop. I wasn't here to make friends or relive old battles. I was here because they finally couldn't deny what I'd become. The main hall was lined with banners and projectors. A digital display scrolled through the honorees. My name was there high up, clean font, no asterisk. For years, my name had only existed in subtext. Laurel's sister. The one who almost. The one who didn't. Now, it stood on its own. I took a seat in the third round at the front. That spot was for the overeager and the oblivious. I didn't need the spotlight, I just needed a line of sight. Laurel arrived 10 minutes later. She entered like always confident, in control, hair perfect, uniform tighter than regs allowed. Dad trailed behind her in a gray suit that looked about a decade outdated. Mom wasn't with them. They didn't see me at first. Then they did. Laurel froze mid-step. Dad didn't react, just followed her line of sight. His eyes landed on me. No smile, no shock, just a flicker of something that might have been confusing. I held his gaze, then looked away. The ceremony started. It was what you'd expect speeches from people who'd never been shot at. Applause on cue, stories polished smoother than truth. Everyone clapped in the same places. Everyone stood when the general in charge gave his closing remarks. Then the host stepped forward and said, "We now honor those whose leadership was forged not in comfort, but under fire." That made the room shift. "Please welcome to the stage Brigadier General Jenna Rowan." I stood. Walked past Laurel, past my father. The only thing I could hear was my boots hitting marble. Applause didn't start immediately. But when it did, it built. Not everyone clapped. But enough did. I took the stage without looking back. The medal waited in a velvet box. A man in 4 stars pinned it to my chest with a short nod. He didn't say much, just leaned in and whispered, "They'll remember this one." He stepped aside. The microphone was mine. I hadn't planned to speak. But silence, once again, felt like surrender. So I did. "I wasn't supposed to be here," I said, voice steady. "Not according to the list. Not according to a lot of people who decided my story for me." People shifted. Faces turned. Years ago, I showed up to a ceremony like this and was told I didn't belong. I wasn't on the list. I didn't argue. I just left. But I didn't leave because they were right. I left because they were louder. A pause. No one moved. But I didn't stay gone. I rebuilt. Quietly. Precisely. And I returned not to prove anything but because I don't disappear when I'm ignored. The room held still. I accept this recognition not as redemption. I don't need redemption. I accept it as record. Proof that the work mattered, even when the spotlight didn't follow it. Then I stepped back. No mic drop. Just silence that finally belonged to me. The applause that followed wasn't explosive. It was steady. Real. I left the stage with my medal, name, and something heavier than both. Dignity I didn't need permission for. They waited in the lobby like I owed them a response. Dad stood stiff, arms crossed like he was guarding something no one wanted. Laurel had her hands behind her back, the posture of someone pretending this wasn't awkward. And Mom just looked at the floor like the carpet might whisper instructions. I didn't rush toward them. I didn't hang back, either. I just left the ballroom and kept moving until the air between us got heavy enough to stop me. Dad spoke first. "Jenna." No rank, no tone. Just the name, like it was foreign in his mouth. I waited. He cleared his throat. "You didn't tell us." "You didn't ask," I said. His jaw tightened. Not angry cornered. He'd spent decades teaching me silence was strength. I was using his weapon, and he didn't know where to aim. Mom looked up. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. "We didn't know, sweetheart. We thought. You thought I was wrong, I said. Because she got to speak first. Laurel stepped forward like she was about to explain a spreadsheet. I didn't mean for it to fall on you like that. Didn't you? I asked. Her mouth opened ready with a practice line, probably one she'd used in some strategy briefing, but she hesitated. That night, she said, everything moved too fast. Intel was scattered, command was pressuring us. I thought it was the right call. No, you hoped it would work out and figured if it didn't, I'd carry it. She shook her head. It wasn't personal. You made it personal when you used my name to clean your mess. I didn't yell. Didn't flinch. I didn't have to. Laurel looked tired now. The kind of tired you can't blame on sleep. Her shoulders slumped just slightly. The confident posture cracked. Mom stepped in, maybe hoping to soften the collision. We were wrong, she said, eyes glossy. You were fighting something we didn't even try to see. I gave her a slight nod. I didn't need you to believe me. I needed you to back me. Dad looked away. You always said family was about loyalty, I said. But that was never true, was it? It was about order. About who fit the story best. None of them argued. Laurel crossed her arms. So what now? You just walk away with the win. No, I said. I walk away because I built something on my own. I walk away because I earned it. Not because you let me. She held my gaze. There was no anger. Just the uncomfortable weight of being seen too clearly. I don't hate you, I added. But I'll never forget what you let happen. And I sure as hell won't let it happen to anyone else under my command. Dad's voice returned, slower this time. You've changed. No, I said. I just stopped shrinking to fit your version of me. There it was. No ceremony, no explosion. Just truth laid flat and unpolished. I turned to go. I'm proud of you, Mom said, almost too quietly. I paused for half a breath. Then maybe next time, say it when it counts. I left them standing there like a painting nobody finished. All three froze, unsure if they were part of the frame or the mistake. And I walked out, no audience, no music, no salute. Just clean air, quiet boots, and the truth finally louder than the silence they gave me. I didn't look back, not because I was done, but because I was just getting started. The thing about rebuilding your name, Isance, it sticks. People suddenly act like they believed in you all along. Officers who couldn't remember my face during the inquiry were now nodding respectfully in corridors. Commanders who once used my rank as a technicality were now referring to me by title before I even stepped into a room. But I didn't buy into the applause. Applause fades. I built something more solid. I went back to work. Not paperwork, not PR. Real work. I took assignments no one wanted: remote base assessments, covert logistics, evaluations, and support unit integration on unstable fronts. I cleaned up messes left behind by people who'd never had to pay for their shortcuts. I didn't ask for a desk. I asked for boots, reports, and the next broken thing that needed fixing. Within 6 months, my record didn't just look clean, it looked earned. They rewrote the reports. It's not just a side note buried in a file official language. Lieutenant Colonel Jenna Rowan. Cleared of all misconduct tied to Operation Nightfield. Commended for leadership under incomplete intelligence, integrity under disciplinary scrutiny, and sustained operational excellence post-review. I didn't frame it. I didn't read it more than once. But I made sure it was in the system. When systems bury you, the only way out is to leave a paper trail so clear that even the people trying to ignore it must trip over it. I kept my teams small, tactical, precise. I didn't want a legacy of numbers. I wanted one of the soldiers who'd say, "She had our backs." My COs knew I'd handle it without lighting another match if they gave me something with a lit fuse. There's a strange kind of authority that comes from surviving a takedown. People don't just respect you, they watch you, some out of admiration. Others out of fear you'll expose the cracks they're still hiding in. I let them wonder. The year after the ceremony, I got assigned to a Joint Operations Leadership Council, a new pilot group meant to streamline field intelligence into high command strategy. Translation. They wanted people who'd seen what happens when egos override intel. The irony didn't escape me. But I showed up anyway. At that table, across from Brass, who'd once rubber-stamped my disciplinary review, I held a pen and a stack of briefing files. I didn't gloat. I didn't flinch. I just read, contributed, and made sure no other non-binding suggestion ever bypassed protocol again. Laurel wasn't on the council. She'd transferred to some civilian liaison role in DC. I didn't ask. I didn't care. My file said enough. The work was grueling, but it wasn't personal anymore. It was systemic. And I was damn good at cleaning systems that thought they couldn't be held accountable. One night, after a particularly rough debrief on a botched supply route in South Sudan, a young captain pulled me aside in the hallway. Wide-eyed. Barely 30. "I read your case," she said. "At the academy. They used it as an example of field ethics under duress." I blinked. "You're kidding." She shook her head. "They called it the Rowan Principle." I laughed once. Loud. Too loud. Then, I shook it off. "I didn't do it for principle," I said. She nodded. "Exactly." I walked away before I said something sentimental. Back in my quarters, I sat at the edge of the bed, boots still on. My uniform jacket hung over the back of a chair, stripes and pins in place. No extra shine, no polish. Just what was earned. They rewrote my record. But I rewrote the expectation. I adjusted the collar of my uniform just enough to feel the stars sit right. They didn't feel heavy knot anymore. Just solid. Like they belonged. The invitation had come in a sealed envelope marked Command Internal. Same crest, same language as the one I once found on a kitchen counter in a house that never felt like mine. Only this time, the address was typed with care. The rank was correct. And next to my name, in bold print, were the words, Guest of Honor. Ceremony for Joint Command Recognition. Fort Brighton. Auditorium West. Dress code. Formal. I got there 15 minutes early. The same kind of early I used to be out of fear I'd be forgotten. Now, it was habit. Not because I was trying to prove anything, just because readiness never left me. As I approached the check-in table, a young officer in dress blues straightened and offered a quick salute. "General Rowan," he said, voice crisp. "You're right at the top of the list." He didn't check twice. Didn't hesitate. He already knew who I was. I gave him a slight nod and stepped through the glass doors. They slid open without resistance and delay, unlike the last time. Inside, the air was thick with brass and ceremony perfume. Flags lined the stage. Rows of chairs were already filling up with names, titles, and legacy. I found my seat in the second row reserved, front center. No one offered it. It was mine before I walked in. The room started buzzing louder as the crowd grew. Somewhere across the aisle, I spotted Laurel. She hadn't changed much, still crisp, still precise. She wore her medals with pride that could double as armor. She didn't see me yet. Good. I turned back toward the screen above the stage. A list of honorees scrolled in slow, deliberate silence. My name appeared near the top, white on deep navy blue. Brigadier General Jenna Rowan, Command Integrity and Operational Resilience. I didn't smile. Smiling felt like too small a gesture for what it meant. They called the room to attention. A 4-star admiral gave the welcome speech, polished, rehearsed, full of terms like exemplary service and unwavering commitment. I'd heard better. I'd heard worse. Then, the ceremony shifted. One by one, officers were called forward, hands were shaken, medals pinned, speeches given. When they called my name, the applause came faster than I expected. Louder, too. Not a roar. But not a golf clap, either. The kind of applause that says, "We know what you survived, and we're not pretending anymore." I walked up the steps. One of the generals leaned in to shake my hand and said quietly, "We've been watching your work. You've built something more than reputation, you've built culture." I nodded once. No small talk. I took the medal, I took the mic. I didn't plan to say much, but the moment demanded something. "I know what it feels like to walk into a room and wonder if you're supposed to be here," I said. The room stilled. "I know what it's like to serve in silence while others get the spotlight." And I know what it's like to be erased on paper, in conversation, in memory. Pause. But I also know this: silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, it's just the space between the noise and the truth. A few heads nodded. One officer near the back stood up straighter. I didn't get here by fighting for attention. I got here by doing the job no matter who was watching. And now I lead not because I was born for it, but because I refused to disappear. I stepped back. No big crescendo. Just the kind of silence that lands like a statement. As I returned to my seat, I passed by Laurel. She looked at me for the first time that night. Her expression is unreadable. Not smug, not sorry, just quiet. This time, I didn't look away. I didn't need to. I walked past the photo wall without checking if my face was on it. Not out of pride, not out of spite, just. Somewhere along the way, I stopped needing to be seen by the wrong people. Turns out, that's when the right ones start noticing. After the ceremony, there was a reception. You know the type: sterile finger foods, forced laughs, highball glasses filled with awkward ambition. I didn't linger. Outside, the parking lot buzzed with idle conversations and jackets draped over shoulders. I found a quiet spot near the flagpole, pulled off my cap, and looked up. The sky was clear. No medals hanging from it. Just stars that didn't need permission to shine. Footsteps approached. I didn't turn. "I always thought you'd fade out," Laurel said. I kept my eyes on the horizon. "That was the plan." "Yours, anyway?" She didn't laugh. "You proved me wrong." "That's not why I came back." "I know," she said. Then added, "You didn't have to come at all." I finally looked at her. "Neither did you." She nodded. "You were right. About all of it. Doesn't fix what you let happen. Number. But maybe it keeps it from happening to the next one." I didn't say anything. I wasn't interested in her regret. I was interested in what she did with it. "Dad's not doing well," she offered. Neither was I. Laurel shifted her weight, searching for a softer place in the conversation. There wasn't one. "I'm not asking for anything," she said. I see it now." I put my cap back on and faced her. "I built everything without your help. Without his blessing, without a single hand from anyone in that house. So don't stand here now and act like recognition is connection." She flinched, not dramatically, but really. I walked past her without another word. Down the steps. Across the lawn. Toward a car that didn't wait for approval. No one called my name. And I didn't look back. At the next base, I took over as division lead. 32 officers were under my command. 47 enlisted. Some fresh out of training. Some were bruised by years of silence. All of them are looking for something solid. I didn't give speeches. I gave clarity. I ensured everyone under my flag knew this. Their worth wasn't tied to who clapped for them. It was in how they showed up. Every damn day. Even when no one said thank you. I built an open-door policy, so wide command thought I was reckless. I wasn't. I just remembered what it felt like to be locked out of a room built by people who said they loved you but didn't listen. Now, I lead my own. One night, a junior lieutenant knocked on my office door after a late ops drill. "Permission to ask a stupid question, ma'am." I looked up. "Only if you ask it with spine." He grinned. "Why do you keep your old patch framed on the wall?" I turned toward it. My original name tag. The one I folded and packed when I was told I'd failed. A patch that traveled through exile, silence, and back. "Because I earned it," I said. "Not when they gave it to me. When they tried to take it." He nodded. Didn't ask more. He didn't need to. When he left, I sat in that office door still open, lights dimmed, jacket draped on the chair, and I didn't think about who never showed up for me. I thought about the ones who stayed. The ones who stepped in after I did. Who needed the table I had to build from nothing? That's the thing about survival, it teaches you how to make room. And I made room. For every voice once told, they were too quiet, too careful, too late. I wasn't invited to the table. So, I built my own. And there's always a seat for someone ready to lead without asking for permission. You don't come back from something like that to prove a point. You come back because the silence stops being heavy and starts being useful. Because the uniform fits differently when you're not wearing it for anyone's approval. Because once you've been erased, everything you rebuild has your name carved deeper into it. People think family is blood. I used to think that, too. But a real family is anyone who shows up when it costs them something. Who hears your voice without needing it to be loud? Who doesn't rewrite your story but helps you write the next page? I'm not here because I was forgiven. I'm here because I never left the fight. And I don't need them to say I belong. I already know I do. So, stop knocking if you've ever stood outside a door that would never open. Build your damn door. And don't forget the lock. If stories like this hit something real for your revenge stories that don't come with explosions, just truth, or family drama where silence cuts deeper than words, go ahead and subscribe. There's more where that came from. Authentic voices, real choices, no sugarcoating. Stick around.